Hello everyone and welcome to my review for Kengan Omega Chapter 141. Some of you may be wondering, Misk, why in God's name are you uploading a review 2 days after the chapter came out? Well, I'll tell you why. We're not getting Shonen Jump chapters until like Monday again this week, and I don't like the idea of having like 5 days in between uploads. I'm pretty sure the algorithm doesn't like that, and my analytics don't like that either, so here we are today on a Friday. But if you're new, or, if you're already a fan of my videos, and you're not subscribed, why the fuck not? If you're watching this and you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button and help us reach our new subscriber goal for 2022, hitting 5,000 subscribers. Whenever we manage to do that, I'm going to suffer through a 24-hour-long live stream, so if you're interested in watching that catastrophe, you should definitely be sure to subscribe. But with that out of the way, let's get on with the review. This chapter is separated into two fairly distinct parts. The first part focuses on the 2v1 battle between the Kure, Wu, and Westward faction heads, Ario and Wu Jing versus Edward Wu. As we expected, Eddie's kinda stomping. His performance from the last chapter has pretty much held up. What we're mostly getting in this chapter is some stuff kind of showing off what Wu Jing can do, because he's the only member of the actual Wu clan that we've met, and he's the head, so you would kind of have some expectations for him. And the fight between these three is serving to kind of establish what the primary difference is between the three clans. The Wu seem to primarily focus very heavily on assassination techniques. It's basically fucking ninjutsu. Wu Jing didn't do any, fire breath this chapter like he did last chapter, but he was making use of a bunch of sneaky assassination tactics. We've gotten our first Wu clan technique, look over there, very effective against people who are not top tier like Eddie. Even then, managed to get the jump on him. The way it works is essentially, when you're in a tough spot, you tell your opponent, hey, look over there. And there's nothing going on, but they still look over there, and that gives you an opening to attack them. Pretty clever. Oldest trick in the book, but it still managed to work on Eddie. What Wu Jing did was he pretty much called out to Ario, saying, it's time to do it now, as if there was some kind of plan for Ario to do something. So Eddie was like, oh, what's going on? And Ario's still just, coughing up blood on the ground after getting his shit kicked in. And this creates an opportunity for Wu Jing to get a surprise attack in on Eddie. So that was just kind of neat. That was kind of funny. Even Eddie's like, I can't believe that worked on me. That's embarrassing. I'm kind of pissed off now. So the Wu clan, almost strictly techniques. The Westward faction, as we've seen from Edward, almost exclusively sheer physical power. We have not really seen a single technique out of Eddie, other than an unnamed use of, Kure clan technique, leg thrust. It's pretty much him just brute forcing through these two guys. Now, it's pretty obvious that Ario, in his old age, and Wu Jing are pretty far beneath Edward's level. However, they're both clan heads, and you would expect them both to be fairly powerful in their own right. So the fact that Eddie's just kind of walking all over them is a pretty big testament to how powerful sheer strength is from members of the Westward faction and their head, Edward. It seems that the Westward faction subscribes to the Julius philosophy of fighting power, which is fuck techniques, all my homies hate techniques, just be really goddamn strong. And techniques won't matter. I don't know if he's going to have any kind of techniques, he just has to be pushed to using it, but as far as we can tell from Edward and Solomon, Westward faction's basically just brute strengthing shit. And Eddie has a funny monologue talking about how the Westward faction is living more in the modern times, and how the Wu clan and the Kure clan are kind of stuck in the past. He even talks about how, Wu Jing, you're walking around with a fucking sword. What are you doing? It's the 21st century. Nobody goes around with swords to kill people anymore. You can kill a guy with one finger. Presumably referring to the fact that firearms exist now. However, there are characters in Kengan that can totally kill a guy with one finger. So, what he's basically saying is, we're in an age where we don't need old-fashioned stuff like that anymore. It's completely unnecessary. You guys are antiques, and we're well beyond your ilk. Now, we finally have Ryan returning to the fray in this chapter. He chucks Solomon back at Edward. However, Solomon is not dead, and seems to be in kind of alright condition. He's exited Goihun, which presumably means he's kind of exhausted. We've seen from Ryan's fight with Oma that you can't really use removal anymore when you're just too physically drained. So, presumably he just exited Goihun because he was way too tuckered out from fighting him. Now, even though Ryan was beaten and bloody by the time they had started fighting, he seems kind of fine now. And it's still Ryan, so the fact that Solomon has survived, kind of duking it out with him a little bit, relatively unscathed, suggests that Solomon's actually kind of strong. Not, like, high tier or anything, just not shit. Just pretty good, at the very least. And we're gonna be having a 3v2 battle resuming probably next chapter, as now Ryan's already in removal, but now Aereo and Wu Jing are entering into removal in Goihun, and we get confirmation that both of them are able to do 100%, which is not surprising, considering they're the clan heads. Aereo was one of the strongest Fangs, if I understand. I've heard some people say that Kano is explicitly the strongest Fang ever, but it suggested that Aereo in his physical prime would have just fucking dog-walked Edward. So that kind of suggests he may have been, stupidly high tier. Like, fucking triple S plus or some shit. Top of the verse, basically. Back when he was a youngin'. Back in his early days, maybe not before he was defeated for the first time, because I'm pretty sure it was after that he went and learned the Kurate technique, so after then, he's in like his 40s or something, and then he learned Kurate techniques. That's presumably peak Aereo, and safe to assume dude's got 100%. If you're the leader of a clan which values genetic strength, you probably have 100% removal, unless they don't have anyone else to pick from. Now, unfortunately for Wu Jing, thus far, 100% Goihun has pretty much been the same thing as full-body armament hockey, so he may not be long for this world, who knows. Or maybe it's just with westward factions, because when Wu Jing uses it, since he's not a westward faction member, he remains the same size instead of hulking out in disgusting fashion. So maybe he'll be okay. But I'm still expecting, like at least Aereo to die in this fight, and it may happen to Wu Jing as well. That would probably increase the impact of this oncoming tragedy. Now, before I get into the second part of the chapter, I figure it's a great time to give a shout out to my wonderful patrons. Special thanks to Neo, Dijon Redden, Anthony Chavez, Honey Mustard, K-God, Chris Redfield, Rat, Ryzen 4K, Artist, Mac Campaign, Wave of Manga, Chuck's Feed and Seed, Jakester EZ, and Playfree Labs. Thank you all very much for supporting me on Patreon. I greatly appreciate it. And if you too want to get a shout out at some point during videos, or access to reviews for The Boxer, and coming soon, reviews for One Piece, you can always become a patron as well. There's a link to my Patreon down in the description. With that out of the way, let's get back to our regularly scheduled review. In the second part of this chapter, we catch back up with Jia, who's getting tortured by Joji and Kureishi. Now we've gotten onto the part where Joji is beating the shit out of Jia. And we learn, at least in Kengan, what the deal is with Joji's ability. What is his gimmick? Every fighter has some kind of gimmick. What's Joji's? Well, Joji's karate moves cause paralysis because of how and where he strikes people. I think he says he strikes specific nerve points. Sometimes he misses, which is a little embarrassing for him personally, but he says, hey, even if I miss the pressure points or whatever, my attacks still hurt like hell. So, essentially, as far as I understand, what did they say his epithet was in this? The venomous viper? The venomous serpent? Something like that? He's like Kuroki, but he doesn't have the Devil Lance, and all of his karate attacks are like Nicholas's Sahate. That's why Joji's so strong, other than, just being really strong. So he's smacking the shit out of Jia. Jia is saying he's not the one that tried to kill Koga, and then Kureishi comes along and breaks the shit out of his arm, and finds that he had a knife, stashed in his sleeve that they hadn't found before, so I guess Jia's kind of like a magician or something with his ability to hide stuff. And we had this funny little interaction between Joji and Kureishi where Kureishi's role-playing as a cop or a TSA officer. It's like, oh, I've found the goods, Officer, Joji. I forget Joji's last name. What is it? Narushima? Whatever. And then Joji just plays along with it. He's like, good work, Officer Kureishi. It's like, Jesus Christ. These guys, I'm so glad to see them being utilized now, as opposed to just being kind of background for a while. Now Jia gets up and he starts talking a big game, saying that he's gonna kill these two. And he's thinking to himself how his inner circle, his most elite bodyguards, are going to be coming to protect him and kill Joji and Kureishi, and how the grunts that he brought along with him to try and kill Koga and Yamashita are nothing compared to those guys. So they should be able to take on Joji and Kureishi. Now, some of you may not be aware of this, but there are more responses to a grave threat than just fight or flight. When you encounter something and you're afraid that you're gonna die, you either want to fight or you want to flee. There are a few other actual responses that people don't seem to know as much about. One is freeze, which is when, your whole body just freezes up, and you can't do anything because you're afraid. And then the other one is cope, in which your brain actually naturally produces a high dosage of copium that makes you completely delusional and think that things are going to work out in a way that is completely divorced from reality. It's actually the study of this chemical in the brain that led to artificial copium that you see a lot of people use on the internet when anything they don't like happens. And that's what's going on with Jia right now. He is so high on copium, he is in another dimension at the moment. Now, it's not going to be Jia's bodyguards that save him. It's going to be Tiger Nico, because Tiger Nico's the one guy who is going to show up and be like, oh, Joji and Kureishi? Yeah, I can handle you guys. Because Joji and Kureishi together are basically the only people in the building that can probably fight on relatively even terms to Tiger Nico, assuming that Tiger Nico is not just literally God at this point. They're basically the two guys going around doing stuff at the moment that can actually really fight Tiger Nico. So that's probably what's going to be happening with these guys. I don't know when we're going to get to that, if we're going to be focusing on that for a few chapters now, or if we're going back to the stuff with Eddie. I'd kind of like to go back to the stuff with Eddie, because that's kind of what we were already into. I imagine if we go back to that, the next time we're going to see Jia, his inner circle has been annihilated by Joji and Kureishi, and then Tiger Nico will show up. So that should be fun whenever we get to it. And with that, that's all I've got to say for this week's review. If you enjoyed, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and click that notification bell so you don't miss any of my uploads. I do Kengan Omega chapter reactions and reviews. Every week we get a new chapter. If you enjoy discussing Kengan Omega with other people, or you just enjoy the content I produce in this channel, I highly suggest you check out my Discord server. I have a link to that down in the description. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys around. Take care.